Hi, everybody. Darryl here. Welcome back to another special episode of Transmissions. I'm going to be talking with our good friend Ant from TFU.INFO and also from the Transformers University podcast. And we are going to take a deep dive into some things that he's into. So I think we're going to touch on some baseball and some reasons why it's a sport. I'm not really into baseball, but we're going to talk about that, and we're going to get into a couple other things. And yeah, we're going to talk about Transformers too, because Ant's into Transformers, and and he's got a website too, where if you are not aware, it is a website where you can go and identify your Transformers if you are not sure if it's what is this thing, or I don't necessarily know what this guy's name is. What do I do with this? Okay, I'll just go to TFU.info and oh, there it is, got it. Okay, that's what the site's for, and it works really well. I use it quite a lot. So let's get into that now. So yeah, we're gonna go and we're gonna chat with Ant. The Beast Wars #1 Beast Wars fan thing has taken on a life of its own.
It has.
At this point, I'm just running with it. I might as well just lean into it. It's nobody else on the show nobody can even compete with me on the money I've spent on it. So I'm just going to be like, until you guys even come close, I'm not even going to even try to give it up. So yeah, I don't even want the title, really.
Well, you can have me on. I did a lot. I bought a lot of this stuff back when it was new. So
yeah, I mean, you'd have that title from me in a minute. Like it'd be gone.
Well, that's just Predacons at this level. Then there's a level above that I haven't really touched. And if you go up, that shelf there is the Maximals, and that goes 3 over. Yeah.
My God. Wild. So we'll definitely circle back to Transformers, because that's going to be a whole topic on its own. But I'm interested in getting into sports with you.
Okay.
Because you're a big sports guy, and I know we've got some differing opinions on sports. So
that's funny. It's a misconception. I'm not a big sports guy so much as that I worked in baseball for so long that that people think I know a lot about sports. I just know a lot about baseball, and then I can kind of fudge my way through the rest. But yeah, feel free.
Right. Well, let's get into baseball then, because I don't understand its appeal. As a hockey playing Canadian, I've watched baseball. I just was at a ball game, and I watched the Jays play, and actually, I'll admit that you're watching them that close, and I had really good seats. It was a fun game to sit there and watch, be in the ballpark. But to sit and watch it on TV, oh my God, it's boring. And I'll play it if I'm on the field playing it. I'll have a great time playing it, but I cannot watch it on TV, and I don't get the appeal. And I mean, it's got to be something that you Americans just love. But and there's a lot of Canadians that love it too, but I don't understand it. And perhaps you can illuminate me on on what's the you find is the appeal for you.
Well, I would say there's a couple things. So one, I think I have to preface this in that the way the game is played now versus how the game was played 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago is very different. To the fact that it's actually become more boring in a lot of ways.
Damn.
I mean, where I've talked to, I have some friends, some former coworkers of mine who are sports writers and analysts, and they're like, this sport is unwatchable right now, because the way they've used data and analytics to, which look, as sports go, they need to do that in order to get that competitive advantage. And it's just, but the way that it's gone without any sort of correction in terms of the rules has made it really hard to watch. Because I just, for example, I've been watching, I don't know if you've seen, I guess you guys have ESPN up there, but they're doing a a documentary on Derek Jeter. And as a Yankee fan, and as someone who like like Derek Jeter came up the year I graduated high school, and like
Okay.
so like my entire like late teens, early 20s into my 30s is like all encapsulated in that documentary. Like I'm sitting there watching it with
Sure.
my wife, and like every big moment, I'm like, I know where I was when that happened. I know where I was when that happened. Um, watching those games and watching just players going first to third, people running, there's a lot more running and throwing, which you don't see anymore. Baseball's really kind of become obsessed with these like true outcomes of walk, home run, strikeout.
Okay.
And so it's become a thing where the game visually isn't interesting anymore because there isn't that physical movement, there isn't that level of athleticism on the field that you used to see. So I feel like baseball's in need of some rules changes, particularly around what they call the defensive shift. So where they'll
Okay.
put all the infielders on one side of the field or the other side of the field and kind of it's almost like what equates to in hockey as where they outlawed the trap, where it was an illegal defense, and they outlawed that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically what baseball has been doing for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now, and no one has gotten rid of it yet. They haven't like made it illegal, so it's really taken away from the game. I think that's the one big flaw with it. But the game, I've heard, but before that, I've always heard the game is boring. The game is this. There's two things, that I feel like are really interesting. Is the game has time to breathe in terms of the action happens, but it happens in a blink, right? It's
Yes.
not like
Yeah. It's
hockey
very quick.
where it's not like hockey where everything is moving, the puck's moving all the time, things are going back and
Yeah.
forth. You know, baseball, there's a lot of nothing, and then something really cool happens, and so that ebb and flow allows for conversation. And so the conversation then allows, which is funny because I find it weird that a lot more like Transformers fans or like sci-fi fans, nerd fans, comic fans aren't into baseball, because it's that same kind of conversation. It's the what ifs, what's about to happen, what are they doing historically, how does that fit? Like people talk,
Mhm.
like baseball's more about a game. It's more of watching a game but having a conversation at the same time. So I think
Right.
that's where the appeal is for a lot of people. It's the ebb and flow of that. And then watching it at home, as someone who got paid for a long time to watch baseball, I can understand when it gets boring. Trust me.
Yeah.
But when it's good, it's good. The tension's there. The drama is there.
Yeah. Well, I did ride along with the Jays a number of years ago to they were on this playoff run, and it was the year when um, Bautista did the bat flip, and that's still a big moment here in southwestern Ontario. Like you still walk through like malls, and you'll still see like stores selling posters, like big prints of Bautista and the bat flip, and I'm like, what the hell? Like it's he's been gone from the team for like 5 years. Like let the guy go. But so I was watching at that point because playoffs drama. It did add that level of intrigue to it, and but it still had that those that lull during the games when I'm sitting there during each inning, and the game just dies for me. And I look at it as a uh I don't consider myself an athlete. I've never been an athlete. I played sports, but not at a high athletic level. But if you're playing at a professional level and you don't break a sweat, then you're I don't know how you can call this a sport. Like, the guys who are batting and they're running, around the bases at the time, if you hit a home run and you get back to home plate, yeah, maybe you've broken a sweat at that point, right? But the guys who are standing in the field, like, come on, like it's crazy boring, and it's only between the pitcher and the batter, like the two people. When the batter hits the ball, then the other players, get activated, right? And I it's a team sport, but is it really? That's the kind of the contradiction for me with baseball is it's only a team sport if the pitcher or the batter. I guess if the batter succeeds or the pitcher screws up, I guess. I don't know if you want to, the batter really needs to succeed for the other team members to get activated and brought into the game.
Yeah, well,
Right.
it's a game of it's a game of failure when you get down to it.
Right.
I mean, the best hitters of all time failed almost 70% of the time. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so like that, the game itself, it's rare in that the game is the only one it's one of the few games where the defense has the ball. You don't usually see that in
Yeah.
most sports, right? So it's one of those things where it's certainly more about there is an individual nature to it, but you can't play without a team either. So
Of course. Yeah.
right. So it's one of the great ironies of the game. It's very much akin to watching a chess match in a lot of ways, right? So like
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
you're watching, trying to plan. You're basically trying to be the manager. You're basically trying to plan out the game as you're watching it. It's kind of it's funny because again it applies to like a lot of what we talk about, and that like when new figures leak, well, why didn't they do this, why didn't they do that? Like you play those same guessing games watching
Sure.
baseball,
Yeah.
and you play those same games in that well, all right, what's the next step, what's the one that's coming after this? So there's certainly a lot of similarities, but in terms of like action, you're not going to get that so much. Yeah, I gotta admit, hockey has the better fights, but baseball has the crazier fights.
They're not, but they're not guaranteed though, right?
No, they're not very good. They're usually not very good, but it's always one guy who's about to get his ass kicked by 9 guys.
Yeah, it's nuts. I'll give you that. Like if you have a fight, it's a bench clearer every time, right? They that's stopped in hockey. It's very rare that a bench clearer will happen, right? Full line brawls, sure, that'll happen. But a bench clearer, no, that's very rare. Yeah, you guys have some crazy fights. But then I'll talk to people, and I just had a conversation the weekend before this last one where I was talking to some basketball fans, and they say, well, hockey and basketball are all action, it's all movement. Why don't you like basketball? And I'm like, well, I don't like basketball because there's too many points now, right? So at some point in time, if each team scores 100 points, the points don't matter anymore. Like I'm not cheering for points anymore if each team scores 100, right? So the only for basketball for me, it's the end of the game that actually matters. I'll tune in when there's 4 minutes left in the game, right? Because that 4 minutes is going to last 20, and but the points in the game don't particularly matter when each team can score 100 of them, right? And basketball it's higher on my list than baseball, just because of its constant motion and action, and something's always happening, and the guy and the players break sweats. So
well, it's funny. I used to get paid to watch basketball every so often too, and that was always my all right. Well, I'll just look for cool stuff in the first 3 quarters, and if the game doesn't get out of hand, then it's going to pay attention in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, it's weird because I've always been the guy who will play any sport. I love it. I spent a year in Australia and played Australian rules football on a team, and I had a blast playing it. And they're nuts, like they're crazy people, right? And I don't know if anybody listening or whatnot has ever played or played.
I've seen it. I
Australian
don't
rules
understand it, but I've seen it.
It's crazy sauce. They're jumping on each other's backs and stuff. It's crazy. No equipment at all, and just nuts. Yeah, it was really quite fun. And but if if you're watching it, it kind of looks like rugby. It's kind of looks like football, but not more soccer, like really, but kind of a mix of soccer and rugby. But yeah, it's an interesting sport as well. But yeah, so I wanted to touch on, because we've chatted online, because you, sir, have multiple Emmys, and I've tried to compete with that with my minor league hockey trophies. But so you got these Emmy awards for your work with the MLB, right?
That's correct. So, uh, in my career, my former career in sports television, I worked for MLB Network, which is the league-owned television network for Major League Baseball, and I was there about 3 weeks after they launched in 2009. I was there about almost 5 years, and we won as a show. Our flagship show, MLB Tonight, won most outstanding studio show for a nightly show in the National Sports Emmys 3 years in a row. So from 2010 through
Wow.
2012, we took home the Emmy, and as an editor and a producer on that show, I got statues out of it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well done. That's very cool. That's something that a lot of people, I mean, they give a lot of those statues away, but there's not a lot of people that have an opportunity to even get those statues.
Yeah. I mean, I will joke that I won 3, but I've lost 4. Uh, so like I'm less than 50%. But they give them at various levels too. So the thing about the Emmys is that they're an industry award. So like, yes, everyone
Mhm.
knows the primetime Emmys. Everyone probably knows the daytime Emmys and the sports Emmys. Those are all national Emmys. So those are all what I call the full size Emmys. Those are the big
Sure.
statues. But each local market in the in the US does their own kind of Emmy awards. So one of the ones, the first one I ever lost was a New York Emmy. So when I worked in local news in New York, I lost an Emmy. But like I have friends who have won multiples of those. The statue is a little smaller, and they give them out in various regions. I would assume as the regions get smaller, the statues get tinier too. I don't know how true that is, but I like to think like if
you get a little keychain at some point.
yeah, like if you win a local Emmy in the middle of like I don't know, North Dakota, you get like just like a little MicroMaster Emmy.
Well, it's very cool, and I do find that I find it interesting that you do tend to work them into many shots. If they're in the background of a lot of things, I'm like, oh, there's his Emmys. Oh, he's it's they're like a permanent part of your display now, and I find that funny.
It's funny. I moved them out of here. Actually, they're in the living room now with like the important family pictures. But I used to have them back here too, because when especially during the pandemic, this room kind of doubled as my work office, and as someone I work in the corporate world now doing video, like you kind of want to put that out there, like, hey, I know what I'm talking about, and
Sure.
so
Yeah.
you want to have that up there sometimes, just as kind of a way to just let people know that you that you're not somebody who like, how could I put it? That you come with some experience and some level of knowledge.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. No.
because sometimes
Knowing what you're
people are
talking about
very
is big time.
in the corporate world, sometimes people are very quick to dismiss folks who work on the creative side of things as kind of being maybe a little bit artsy, a little bit like not as successful. And so you just want to kind of make sure you have that there in your back pocket.
Hmm. No, exactly. And being able to, and it's Emmys are sharp, right? So I
Oh
mean
my
they're
God, yes.
so I mean you can do some damage with them if you really if they're pissing you off, right? Just wave them around and hey, get out of
It's
my
the
face.
wings on the back. Like I keep them on a high shelf, keep them away from my daughter because I know they're sharp. I've certainly hit my finger on them before.
Well, they're very cool, and I will definitely continue to post pictures of my shit minor league hockey trophies because they were participation trophies, and I definitely we're on the same level. I think at some point here, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I like posting those pictures of those Emmys with toys just because like who the hell else is going to do that, right? So let's just do something
Nobody.
ridiculous with them. As
Yeah.
my friends and I would joke that, like, everyone knows, a lot of, I am very much Italian American, and the first question a lot of people ask me is like, well, are you going to get a gold chain to put those around your neck? Like, and I'm still working on a way. They're heavy, so I
Oh
can't.
my God, they would be so heavy, so heavy. Yeah. Oh man. Now y- we talked about it briefly when you got on here, but it's not it wasn't part of the recording. But you did move down to Florida.
Yep.
So how's the transition been from New York? And you were in like New York, right? So
Uh, well, not when I moved, but yeah, but I grew up in New York City, so
okay.
I'm a native of Queens. So Queens native. I grew up in New York. After I got married, my wife and I moved out to Long Island, where she's from, which is a little bit east of New York City. So if Queens is probably the furthest east part of New York City, Nassau County, which is what they consider Long Island, even though Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau County are all in the same actual physical island. Uh,
Okay.
that's where Long Island proper starts. We moved out to Nassau County for a little bit, and then and then moved from there to here. Um, I would say that the adjustment, we're getting used to Florida life. It's different because, like, instead of not going out in the winter, you just don't go out in the summer. So like
Oh,
June through like now, like this part of August, you're like, I don't want to be outside. But like January, February, you're like, oh, this is awesome. So it's the flip side. I'd rather be hot than cold, so that's cool. I think the one thing, I people ask me, do you miss anything about New York? I'm like, the biggest thing I miss is the food. Everything's a
oh
chain
really?
down here, and like, can't get good pizza, can't get good bagels. Don't know if I haven't tried Chinese down here, so I don't know if I can get good Chinese. Where I am in Orlando is a little bit on the outskirts of Orlando proper, so like we don't get the city life that you would if you were in downtown Orlando.
You must be then close to Disney then.
Not exactly. So Orlando's kind of big in terms of like what's considered Orlando. It's spread out pretty far. We're about, I don't know, probably a half hour, 45 minutes from Disney.
Oh, that's not far at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty close. The like the city I'm in, London, is set up very poorly. So if I were to drive to the if I drive to the diagonally across the city to get to because I'm in the southeast, if I were to drive to the northwest, it would take me 45 minutes.
Okay.
And it's just because it's terrible road system. but but yeah, so half an hour away from Disney isn't, yeah, that's close for me. So yeah, but do you still like Orlando? I would assume is almost entirely set up as uh touristy, right?
Yeah, for the most part, we're near the airport, so like we're actually in the other direction. So it's more of a suburb where we are. Like, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, it's not bad. I mean, in terms of like being touristy, we're not really in a touristy area, but some areas like it's certainly
Yeah.
play towards that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And the transition for the rest of the family has been all good because everyone kind of grew up in New York, right?
Yeah, I mean, my daughter was let's see, she had just barely a week past her second birthday when we moved, so we're
Okay.
she had no idea. And then my wife's been adjusting. My wife's actually really adjusted well. She's made a lot of friends down here. We know we've got a pretty good community, pretty good like group of people we hang out with and see on a regular basis. Plus, having my daughter around, like, you go to kids parties, you just go, like today we had a birthday party to go to, and then
Oh,
there
right
was
on.
a neat little like farmers market they had in the community area over here. So we went to that. We ran into some people we knew. So like it's just one of those things where like you make friends. And thing with Orlando, and I hate to say, because when I used to hear people say it in New York, it would make me mad. Is that it doesn't seem like everyone from Orlando is from somewhere else. Uh, so and as someone who grew up in New York, and I remember hearing that once at a bar, and I was like, I'm from New York. Like, I was just really aggravating. It said something to someone about it, but um, it does ring pretty true down here. Everyone here is kind of transplanted, so everyone kind of finds their group and their family, or like their friend group to celebrate holidays and do whatever else, down here.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm assuming in your area, then you still would get a lot of snowbirds.
Yeah, yeah. We've got some snowbirds. We've got a lot of people from the Northeast, people that we that lived in, close to where we were, either in New York or New Jersey. Actually, one of our one of our friends, I was talking with him, and he used to be a volunteer firefighter, and we figured it out. Like he was a volunteer firefighter at a place where a friend of mine, his dad was like the old man there that taught everyone.
Wow,
Yeah. So
that's wild. What a small world.
yep.
That's really neat. Well, that's cool. Very good. I'm glad that you guys are making, making a life for yourself down there, and everything's kind of fitting together for you. That's always good. It's I've grown up in this area, and I've only kind of moved, small little hop, skips, and jumps around here, but it's always been right here. And the idea of moving, to a different province, or across the country kind of thing, is just that's has never really entered my mind. It's always been like, you're gonna be here, and that's always been the thing, right? So yeah, it's
So
good
you're
for you
not going
guys.
up to Letterkenny anytime soon.
We're taking a trip, and we're going through where they shoot it. So I'm gonna try and see what's going on there. Yeah, but no, it's very it would be really really cool to just pick up everybody and just leave. Sometimes, yeah, I fantasize about it, but I would, the fantasy is also just me going, and it's, I have to take everyone else with me, I guess. Now, have you established a community of Transformer fans down there, or have you kept this to yourself?
I haven't like hidden it, but I have kept this pretty much to myself. I haven't found a group of fans down here just yet. Something I've been meaning to do, but yeah, not yet.
Oh, I know, I mean, just through listening to other podcasts and talking to other, Transformer fans online and stuff like that, there appears to be a pretty decent contingent in Florida. I don't know how close to Orlando. I know Josh Perez is in Orlando, so I mean, he's definitely in your area. But yeah, so that's I often wonder, with someone, such as yourself, like myself, with a large collection of figures, how close to the chest you keep it, when you're trying to start a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I don't advertise it out there, but like my my wife's friend, one of our friends came in here, like when we first met them, and they were hanging out, and and so my wife gave her a tour of the house, and usually she's like, "That's Anthony's office," and like, just that's it, door stays closed. And I was at work at the time, and so oh no, was I might have been here, but yeah, so she was like, "Oh, let's go look," and she just opened the door, and she got like all tripped out by it, and she thought it was great, and I was like, "Oh, cool." Like, I haven't really, like, since then, haven't really said like, "Oh, it's just the thing I do," and like, I haven't really like advertised it to people, but
Yeah,
yeah, if people want to come in and see it, that's cool with me too. So it, it's more that it's not presentable yet. Like this stuff behind me right now is like the stuff that's in the best shape, and then there's one straight across from me. But I have so much stuff that's just in storage from the move, and
hmm,
even from before the move, because when my wife and I moved to Long Island, a lot of my stuff went from my apartment to back to my parents' house, and lived
okay,
in their basement for a while, and then I shipped it all down here when we moved, and so it's in giant plastic bins in my garage. So I'm working on it. It's not, I don't have everything set up the way I want. I don't know if you can see in the split shot. You probably can't see it, but if you look at just a single shot of me, there's a black bookcase here. One
okay,
of the things I wanted to do that I've been waiting on is that these IKEA shelves behind me, they make a cornering shelf that is pretty big.
hmm,
They're 20 by, let's see, I don't know what this comes out to in metric, but they're 32 inches by 32 inches by 20 inches. So they're fairly large. But I have another display just like this one on this side of me on the right. And so to have the corner cut around, and then I was like, oh, those shelves would be big. That's good. I could put combiners or Titans on the back of them, and put
sure,
them pretty high, and do something where it loops around. Haven't really done that yet. I finally got the one on my right because IKEA had had issues with supply chain, just like everyone else, right?
Oh,
And
sure. Yeah.
so these shelves, I was waiting forever for them to come in because they have like the deepest shelving unit they do. So for me, it's not so. It's they go up 96 inches, so they go up fairly high. But they also go something like 28 or 29 inches back. So you don't um, you can go really far back and put a lot of stuff on them. And then what I do is I use like cardboard boxes, or now I use Generation Selects boxes, and I use them as
Okay.
tiers and layer
Yeah,
them up.
that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a very good idea. Yeah, I should dig some of those out because I got a bunch of those too. Yeah, right on. No, that's cool. And you have so I mean, you could obviously just tell people, well, I run a website, and
Yep, our
this
website
is
and
all.
podcast. Yeah.
So I do, I do this all for the website, and I have to have all this, inventory, right? Um, when did you start TFU.info?
Oh man, we are coming up. I always say we, the site, because the site feels like an entity outside of myself.
I think it
Um,
is.
let's see. I want to say this is our 20th year.
Holy
Uh,
smokes! Yeah.
I started it in 2000. Let's see, the end of 2001. Yeah, into the beginning of 2002. Um, because I was pretty much out of work. I had finished college,
Okay.
and fun, not a funny story, but just the way things work out. I had finished my first gig in TV, where I was working the U.S. Open, the tennis U.S. Open, in 2001, and that went 3 weeks starting mid-August and ended on September 9th. I'm like, I'm taking Monday off, and Tuesday I'm looking for work. And Tuesday was 9/11. And so I was still living at home. I was less than 5 miles away from the trade centers, the world just kind of
Wow.
changed that day, the day I was going to start looking for work again. And just needless to say, like, New York was a hard place to find any work, much less work in television and news without like
Yeah.
having contacts and whatnot. So it took me a good probably took me a good year and a half, 2 years to really like establish all those sorts of things. So I was freelancing here and there, and like just doing whatever I could, but I wasn't working that much. So when I wasn't working, I was home. Like, you know what? Someone told me once, we used to talk about like, why isn't there a yojo.com for Transformers? And someone's like,
Mhm.
well, why don't you do it? And I was like, well, yeah, why don't I do it? So it's kind
Okay.
of how it came about. So I launched that site like there was a soft launch, I think late 2002, and then by 2003 I was up and running. I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but yeah, the site's been around a while.
That's very cool. So, you know, so 9/11 gave birth to TFU.info.
I wouldn't say that. I don't think it's a direct line. I would say more of that. The time I had from not having work gave birth to that. Yeah.
Well, let's assume that there's a the silver lining to that was that TFU.info was born. So yeah, let's yeah, I'll give you that. I'll draw that line for you. It might be a little curved, but it's it leads you there. So that's very cool. 20 years. Congratulations on that.
Yes, thank you.
That's a very good milestone, and a well used site. So I definitely have used it many times myself. Um, and you know the the site itself is it's gone through a couple iterations, and I think you've been working on one for a while.
Yeah,
uh
yeah.
how close to are you to completing that?
Not close at all.
Oh, okay.
No, it's one of those things. It's just the more I do it, the better off the site is long term.
Okay.
It's just a matter of finding the time to do it when um I probably I hate to say I've spread myself a little thin between the podcast and the website, but as a one man kind of show for everything, I try to choose my battles where I'm going to do things, especially since,
Sure.
and this as a podcaster, right? You have people who listen to the show you have your Patreon folks, so you want to make sure they're taken care of because they're literally giving you money directly, right? So you want to make sure
Mhm.
they're happy. And so between that and then just real life, like the website update has not been going nearly as much as well as I've liked, and it's been one of my goals for the year is to get a bit further along. But I'm into the movie stuff at this point, at least on my local hard drive, which is good because like I code like everything is about coding certain things into one massive file that I can then just link to each page. So things like the number of movie Optimus Prime figures there are, or Bumblebee, and both those pages are done, which is something of a massive task in and of itself. But that makes every subsequent Prime and Bumblebee page that much easier to do. So
Mhm.
in the previous iteration of the site, like for the most part, for things like that, as a character came along or came back, I would then have to go back to all the original pages and copy and paste the new item into each one. Now it's just adding
Gotcha.
one, and then it's already updated for everyone. So little things like that. And I'm not much of a web designer. I know just enough to make the website work and to make things useful for people. But I feel like I'll get there. There hasn't really been like an update to the archive since 2016. But at some point we'll get to the point where I can just be doing photos and adding pages as opposed to updating old pages. So we'll get there. It's going to be a little while, but we'll get there, and then we'll be
Okay.
caught up. And the cool thing is I'm still taking photos. I still have, it's not like that stuff isn't coming. It's not like I have to like. I mean, I will always have to reach out for folks to donate photos, and but there's still a whole backlog of photos that are going to come in of recent things.
Cool. The now I didn't look. I should probably look before I ask this question and make myself um, look like an idiot. But I think yeah. So you do have GoBots on here,
Oh yeah.
uh, and so that does fly in the face of one of the controversies of the fandom, whether GoBots are canon or not, because I am in this staunch in the field that they are now canon because Hasbro owns them, and and they have appeared. Well, Psykill has appeared in a comic, so they are now proper Transformers now. And I mean, if you're putting them on your site, and I know you're the hardcore, Hasbro guy, these have got to be canon now. They've got to be proper Transformers for you.
Well, they were canon long before Psykill appeared in a comic. I think it was a year before that in 2004, 2003, 2004. The eHobby Minibot set came out, and those are all GoBots characters. So they pulled them in there. So there was official fiction that pulled in Pathfinder and Road Ranger, Bad Boy, Bug Bite. That's where Bug Bite comes from the
Mhm.
recent line. And hold on, I want to look. I can look over at them because they're on a shelf over here. So those and a couple others were all made part of the fiction in that regard. So it happened there, and it's happened multiple times since the Psykill showing up in I think it was he in Dreamwave? I think he used to get killed off in Dreamwave fairly
Well,
regularly.
it was Megatron Origins where Megatron is killing him. Yeah,
Okay, I'm
yeah.
pretty sure he shows up as a background character in a couple of the Dreamwave comics too.
I wouldn't
Uh,
doubt it. Yeah.
yeah, and then and then just that, and then you even get down to like more recently Tom Scioli's GoBots crossover, not crossover, his GoBots comic, right?
Mhm.
Um, the very I don't know if you read it, but the very
No.
end kind of implies that that Road Ranger becomes Optimus Prime, at least in Tom Scioli's mind, which is
Oh,
uh,
jeez.
really and he's drawn as Rob Liefeld's Captain America cover. So
Oh,
it's
really?
yeah, it's
Oh, great.
it's incredibly awesome.
What a mess.
Uh, uh,
Oh,
so
man.
I mean, there's precedence. I think I had GoBots up there before that though, only because before they had crossed over, just because there wasn't a good archive for it. And as a fan, I was a GoBots fan before I was a Transformers fan. I think when I was younger, I was very much in the Gobots camp until until I kind of moved on to other things. I mean, I like Transformers, and I came back to Transformers in a big way after the return of Optimus Prime. Like that really got
Mhm.
me back into the toy side of things. So,
Oh,
Gobots have
wow,
always
you
been a
were
thing for
really
me.
late, eh? Yeah.
I wasn't that late, but like if I look at like I had things here and there, but I was never like really into, yeah, I was never really into. I don't want to say never. I'm trying to think. Like I did definitely miss like things while they were out. Like a lot of my Transformers as a kid are 87, like 86, 87 figures, and then stuff I got from uh
Mhm.
the mail away
Yeah.
figures. So like I had Wheeljack and Sunstreaker and Ratchet from the mail away, not from buying them in the store. I had a couple of Transformers here and there because people would buy them for me as like gifts or whatever. Like I think Brawn might have been my first one, and then Slag because I loved dinosaurs at that age. So like that's where that came from. So I had definitely had a few here and there, and because they were so similar to GoBots, like I was definitely into them. But I was
Mhm.
more into the cartoon than the toys, I think, at that point.
Right. Yeah, that's seems to fit a lot of people's stories.
Yep.
Plus, GoBots were cheaper,
Yeah.
and the as a parent, if you don't know what your kid is going to be into, you're going to go for the cheaper option first, right? So
Yep.
GoBots were probably the first thing most parents bought for their kid, because they were so much cheaper.
My
Um,
dad always said that he liked them better because they were all metal. They were all
oh,
die-cast metal.
okay.
I remember him telling me that, like, when I was older. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." I'm like, "That actually makes them harder to keep because they break
Yeah.
easier."
Yeah. No, they definitely had to. I mean, there's a lot of them at the store that I help out at, and they're, none of them are in good shape. Like they're
Mhm.
they're all beat to hell. So yeah, there's a couple of the older ones. The one that always seems to make it through is that the two versions of the plane, like the I can't remember his
Oh, Water
name.
Walk, because
Must
that's one Water Walk, the one at the water plane? Or is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
yeah,
There's
because
two
they
versions of that. There's like the beige one, and then there's the white one. So
yeah,
yeah.
and the beige one is the actual one. The white one is generally it's a knockoff. Sometimes it's a machine robo figure from overseas, but it that one seems to have been knocked off many times. That one in Slicks, which is the Formula One car, uh, just get definitely those two got knocked off all the hell.
Yeah, that one seems to make it through. All the beating and banging those things did, because there's a few of those in the store that are in really nice shape actually. So yeah, but GoBots, man, that's that's fun. They're an interesting little niche thing, and new collectors are going to be able to get this new Crasher figure that's coming through, and they're not going to know what the hell it is, and it'll be interesting to see the reaction.
Well, it's fun because
Um,
we've gotten a couple GoBots in the line recently. I mean, we've gotten Bug Bite, we got Road Ranger. Like those are ones. Even though like Road Ranger's colors are based off the hobby figure and not off the GoBots figure, but like
mhm,
that's something we're seeing a lot of, which is pretty
mhm.
cool.
Yeah, and the Diaclone stuff, that's it's interesting to see
Mm.
that, for sure. I mean, there's um there's definitely been a need for the repaints, because you want to get different molds, more harder to create molds. So addition of these repaints, or give them another character to kind of use the figure for, the mold for. And I think it's I try to look at it from what a business side, from what they would do, not from a collector side, because I don't buy hardly any of the repaints. But if there's a potential repaint, then that's something that I'll say, okay, well, if they do this character, then there's potentially three other repaints that they could do, right? And that's you know that's generally how I look at it. And I don't know, if you probably have seen that. I mean, there's very rarely a figure that comes out and it's one and done, and here we are. We got nothing left for it now. Most of the time we're seeing that in the masterpiece line, and there's I think it's I think it's Masterpiece Hound is one out that's been out right now that they don't have anything for. I fully expect them to do an e-hobby version of that. The Detritus, I think
Right.
there's probably going to be one of that at some point. Um, and then the Masterpiece Beast Wars figures are some of the ones that I find that there's going to be an issue with doing remolds or repaints of those. Um, Beast Wars Megatron is definitely one because I cannot see them doing a Beast Wars T-Rex, um, like a masterpiece T-Rex. So like it was funny enough to get one in the main line, and then get one for the Jurassic Park line, but to make one in the masterpiece line, I don't think it's going to happen. So, you know, the masterpiece line is kind of funny on the whole repaint line, but the main generations line I think is where we're going to see an awful lot of wild and crazy repaints. And yeah, as long as they do it and they keep doing it, I'm fine with it. We're going to get a lot of fun and different characters for sure.
Yeah, I would say, with Masterpiece, the trick there is that those toys are such high parts counts, right? Especially something like Hound, right? Where I haven't
Mhm.
really had a chance to. That's one actually I got right before I moved, so I just kind of took it out of the. I don't know. I think I might have packed it in the box and just shipped it. So I don't even think I've gotten to play around with it much. But that figure has a high parts count. I don't even know if you'll see it in this, kind of state of this economy of toys that we're in now, where
Mhm.
plastic is costing so much and shipping costs so much, and that we're kind of in this different economic situation around the world. Um, I don't know if you'll see a repaint of that because I don't know if it's feasible to do it where you get it out at a price point that people will pay
Mhm.
for that repaint. Hasbro's smart in that they're doing the Generations line. One thing I've noticed that they've gotten very smart about is they're willing to take a mold and reuse it, but not reuse it right away, not reuse it within 2 or 3. Like they're willing to stretch a mold out for a few years before they bring it back sometimes. So like,
Yeah.
Detritus is a good example. Like I really feel like you're going to see that as one of these rumored Junkion figures that we're seeing listed, in that it could just be
Okay.
Hound recolored because they've repainted that Hound once. And they did it again as Hound, right, for the Netflix line. So the other neat thing that Hasbro's doing is now they're willing to acknowledge that difference between, say, show colors and toy colors, things they've done in the past,
Right.
like that were unintentionally
And
different.
comic colors.
Yep. And so they can now take a character and do the same, top tier character and do it 3 times, or and before even getting to the repaint. And a good example of that is the Kingdom Dinobot mold, right? So we got 2 Dinobots and a Grimlock out of that. But that
Mhm.
mold originally in Beast Wars was used, I think, 8 times. So and I mean that's counting. I mean, actually, well, and most 3 or 4 of those are just different versions of Dinobot. But like, you could totally delve into the hard head figure or a couple of the other
Yep.
repaints and have some fun with that. And a lot of those Beast Wars molds got a lot of use later on in generations in universe, the first run of universe. So you certainly could
Mhm.
find ways to recolor those toolings. But if you look at something like Siege Sideswipe or Cliff Jumper, like those are getting tons of iterations just by
So
swapping
many.
out heads, right? And then
Yeah.
stretching them down the line. And it's a smart move by Hasbro, like to see them do that. Same with the Seeker molds. Like you always knew what was going to happen with Seekers. I mean, even with classics, I did the math. I did that page for the site. I think it's something like 30 plus versions of that Seeker mold are out there.
It's insane.
So it's smart of them to find a way to kind of apply that to other characters, other molds, as from a business standpoint. Now, from a collecting standpoint, that might cause some fatigue to some extent, but
Yeah.
from a business standpoint, I mean, it's super smart of Hasbro.
Yeah. Now, um, what uh where do you fall on the so this is something that's been bothering me quite a bit lately, and is starting to pull me away from mainline. And even though I am buying a lot of the mainline, G1 figures, um I'm starting to pull back a bit because the quality control is starting to lack considerably. And I mean, we've talked online a bit about it, but the one that's calling that's pulling a lot of attention right now is Motormaster, right? With a lot of yellowing plastic. Posts I saw today are with the fins on the beside his heads breaking off. I saw two separate posts today with those things breaking off. Now, I don't have the figure yet. I could have got it and didn't. I That was one of the ones I pulled away from this week. Or 2 weeks ago. No, it was this week. I got called about it going and picking it up this week. Do you have Motormaster yet?
No, he is on his way. I
Okay.
just got the email that he shipped. I hear you on that. I think, I haven't experienced it much until just recently, where I opened up the Worlds Collide set from Target, the four
Okay.
pack, and like the Nemesis Primal was great, and Bumblebee for his, in terms of quality control, also really good. But then Black Arachnia, flimsy as all hell, loose and floppy.
Okay.
Same with Fangry, his legs loose and floppy. Where I was like, wow, this is something I don't think I've experienced in a long time. Getting something fresh out of the box and being like, this is not the like this.
Yeah.
The plastic quality didn't feel good. The hand feel of it didn't feel good. So I think some of this is repercussions from the pandemic, at least in my observation. And
Okay.
I don't have I don't have any insider knowledge on this. This is
Yeah.
just kind of my observation from a 10,000 foot view, and it's part of it for me, especially with the yellowing. And this is a little bit from one of the group chats we had with Hasbro, is that they were using different factories, and so some of those factories were not following guidelines. And this is back when we were talking about the Cyberverse RC figure
Yeah.
yellowing and a couple other things, but they were able to figure out that it was a specific type of plastic, so they know where the plastics are being used that are like that, and they kind of narrowed it down to certain factories to make sure they were following guidelines. And I think that's a scramble in terms of the pandemic. That meant Hasbro couldn't get to their normal factories for whatever reason. Factories were slowing down, not putting out product, and so they went somewhere else. The other thing is the shipping crisis, which I think has played into a lot of the yellowing. What no one seems to be talking about is that we know these things were being delayed, right? We saw it with our pre-order release dates
Sure.
being pushed back, and now all of a sudden jumping up on us to the much to the dismay of my credit card.
Yeah.
um I think some of that, when you think about how that works logistically, right? So these things are still being manufactured on time, or in some sense of being on time, but then they're thrown into, they're put into cases, they're put into cargo ships and shipped across the ocean, and then are sitting in port waiting to come in. So I feel like part of that is more of a storage thing, that if you have the combination of a factory that may not be doing everything up to code or up to Hasbro standards, plus shoving all these things into a storage bin that is either sitting on the ocean with salt, with seawater and seawater air, or sitting on a dock with seawater and seawater air, and then either baking in that container, or just being kind of in there where it's not moving, it's not going to different climates or whatever it's going to do. That's got to take a toll on the figure. That's why you're seeing yellowed figures in boxes, because they're there in that situation much longer than anyone has ever probably intended them to be. I feel like that's part of the issue. So I feel like the further you get away from that, and as we're seeing these shipping dates jump up, the figures that were manufactured for that, because if you figure Hasbro's timeline is 1.5 to 2 years out, so they're
Mm.
already planning for 2024 at this point, right?
Yeah.
Um, the time it takes for those things to be manufactured, shipped, sit on a dock, get unloaded, then get to your local store. Something is happening there in the delayed version of that process that I think has caused the yellowing. And I think you're going to see less and less of that as we start to catch up from a retail side of to what's coming out. That's just my take on it. And like I said, I don't know how true it can be. That's just observations from my end.
Yeah. So um I did see something about uh Hasbro having like shipping containers sitting on it might have been a dock, it might have been just a parking lot. I don't know. It was sitting somewhere, and somebody had mentioned this thing had been sitting here forever, right? And yeah, it's been hot. So, that kind of thing had happened. The other thing that I had seen is with regards to Motor Master specifically, are these 1 and 2 little pieces that yellow. It's not the whole area, it's not one section, it's one little piece that yellows, which leads me to believe this is happening at the factory level, where this one piece is sitting on the top of the bin of the pieces, and it gets picked off, and then that piece gets inserted into the assembly machine, and then it goes on and on and on. So this one piece sat on top of the bin all night, or however long, and then got exposed to the light that is no good for this particular plastic chemical composition, and then when it got put into the to the manufacturing of the figure, then it started its yellowing process. That's why this one tiny little piece of the figure has started to yellow, and nothing else has, right? So you'd think if the chemical composition is no good, then you'd see a kind of a yellowing across the figure, right? One whole swoosh, but it's just this one tiny little piece or one little strip of plastic is yellowing and nothing else. So it's specific to this one area, and that's it sucks because yeah, I've over the years, since I've been back into Transformers, I've seen this slow decline in quality control, and it's whether it's the price of oil has gone up, which has been weird because it's gone over the years, it's crashed back down and it's gone back up, and it's fluctuated. Oil prices fluctuate, and that's it's just the way of things. But the way these figures are built, just it's getting cheaper and cheaper, and people have talked about it for years, how the gappiness of the figures has gotten bigger, and the figures have gotten lighter, and there's no pins in figures anymore. Like the wheels are attached with these, they're just kind of like pressure pegs now, and they pop off easy. Like at the store that I help out at, the amount of Combiner Wars, Menace, like Motor Masters and Optimus Primes, and that white Optimus Prime that come in and they have no wheels, like it's ridiculous. They're all gone. Like those wheels fall off, like like it's their job was to fall off. It's so the quality of these figures is just, and I don't know whether this is just they're learning how to do it, and that's just the first version of that. But it's just, as it's getting further and further away from the, I guess, the mid 2010s, early 2010s, it the figure quality of these main lines is getting worse and worse and worse, and this yellowing issue is just the latest thing. It's just it's been declining for a while, and you've been in it long enough to know that, like, a figure that I like to go back to as an example of like peak Transformers is Sergeant Cup from the Generations line, right? His head was junk, like absolute shit. He had the worst face, right? But that was a solid figure, right? And I would put that up against anything, because first of all, it only cost, well, it cost like 15-16 bucks here in Canada, which probably meant it was like $10 in the US.
It was 10
right?
bucks here in the US. Yeah.
It's ridiculous, right? Which is absolutely ridiculous when you think that a deluxe is now $30 here in Canada, right? It's crazy, right? And that figure's not that old. What the hell is happening, right? Do we have to actually, start to, consider, bringing back our collections because of, like taking stuff back? Like I like to collect all the mainline stuff if I can, except for like the kid line and stuff. I like to collect all the Generations quote unquote chug stuff, right? Because that was the collector I was, but I can't anymore. I can't afford it. It's, and these are the cheap ones, right? So what where's your opinion on that? What do you think is going on?
Well, I don't know if I have any answers, or at
Or there
least
was a
good
lot
ones,
in
right?
there. That was a lot.
Yeah. I honestly think, the economy of it sucks. Look, I'll be the first to tell you it sucks. But that's kind of what we're seeing across the board, at least in the US, on everything. I mean, that's not just,
Yeah.
toys or
Oh yeah.
whatever. The price jumps have been tough because I think we've seen more price jumps in the last like 4 years than we have in the, look, deluxes in the US were $10, give or take, um, up until 2012, and they jumped to $12, and then they jumped to 15, and then since they were 15, um, which was pretty much up until like the start of the pandemic, then jumped up to $20, $22, or $23, now $25. Um, so I mean, in about 10 years, the price has gone up 150%. So like
Mhm.
that's bananas. Like, yes,
Yeah.
I mean, and I agree
Yeah.
with you there. Plus, you're getting, and I you could see it in just deluxe size figures now. You're sometimes you're getting less toy. You're getting less toy for more money, um, than you were 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think anyone would deny that either. But I think there's a couple of things with in terms of the economy of it. One of the things I've noticed from Hasbro in my conversations with them at Toy Fair and whatnot is that yes, the price point is set, but what you end up having is, in terms of size, in terms of mass, in terms of parts count, sometimes that's spread across a wave. So whereas you'll get, a cliff jumper or something along those lines as a deluxe, even though it's a
Mhm.
small deluxe, you'll also
Sure.
get a big deluxe like an Ironhide or something. I mean, Ironhide
Sure. Like
wasn't sold
a
as a deluxe.
hoist. Hoist
Yeah,
was a
right.
huge one.
Right. So
Yeah.
so it gets balanced out in the wave because the weight or the mass of the wave is how they ship. So
Yep.
they will shift that around the entire wave, not necessarily into to have each figure be exactly the same height or weight. Um, so that's one of the things to consider with that. The other thing, I mean, just in general, we talk about the price of oil, in North America, but the issue isn't necessarily a North American one if the figures are manufactured in Asia. So
Mhm.
what you're running into, especially now with the war in Ukraine, is that Ukraine is a big supplier of oil to Europe and Asia. So the countries where these things are manufactured, even if, say, the Transformers are manufactured in Vietnam, let's just say Vietnam is not a country that uses oil from Ukraine.
Mhm.
Well, the countries that are using oil from Ukraine now have to go out and get oil from somewhere, which means now there's competition. You're talking basic supply and demand, same amount of
Mhm.
supply, but higher demand. So, whereas, the factories in Vietnam are paying, a certain amount of money for oil in Vietnam, prior to the war, now they have to compete with whatever country, who, I don't know, Malta. Let's pick somewhere,
Sh-
pick
Sure.
some
Malta's a
country, right? Let's throw Malta
superpower
in
out
there,
there.
right?
Yeah.
For the
It's funny you
same.
picked Malta because I'm actually half Maltese.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. My
Nice.
mother was born there. Yeah.
I was like, let me pick tiny country in Europe, Malta.
Yep.
um,
Yeah. It's a good pick.
so yeah, but like they're competing with, yeah, like I said, like Malta or Belarus or whoever, like for the same
Sure.
barrels of oil. So
Yeah.
so you have that same thing. So like it raises the cost, and then the cost of getting stuff overseas, getting stuff shipped to the US or to North America, it all just it starts to add up. And what happens is Hasbro then says, well, we're going to make the customer pay for it. And they do it in two ways, right? They raise the price, and then they lower the budget for production. So that's why you get lower parts count, you get less paint apps, you get things along those lines. Is it right? Is it fair? No, not of course not. But it's something that until I hate to say it, but that's one of those things you vote with your wallet until you stop buying the toys or you stop doing it. um they're not going to really take notice,
Yeah.
and even then it's still going to take a year or two before that gets corrected because their production timelines is so far out.
Yeah. And then I've had this been I've had to start voting with my wallet fairly substantially because, you know, it's not that I don't like them, is frankly I cannot afford them anymore, right? Um, the I was at the comic book store this week, and the owner was pricing out the new Black Series stuff that was coming in, and he said he's like, yeah, these are $45 figures now. I'm like, are you serious? These are the same 6-inch figures that they've always been, you know, but they're $45. He's like, yep, that's the new price point on Black Series. I'm like,
Wow.
oh my god, that's ridiculous. 45 Canadian, right? I mean, so that's like $25 US, but I think it's more. It's closer to
It's probably
37
closer to
or something
30
like.
or wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's like, yeah, but it's way too high, right?
Yeah.
Way too high. Um,
By the way, before you go on to something else, I remembered like because I know it's up there behind me somewhere. The Generations Cup. I actually own two of that toy, because in a very rare part of my collection, because I'm not a third party guy, it is one of the few third party things I own is the Iger head for that cup.
that's Yep, and that's the head I have on mine too with the Cygar.
Yeah.
He's it's it
I bought a second
I've
one just to do the head swap onto
yeah,
it.
I've never seen a figure improve more dramatically than when you swap that head on there, because the stock head for that Sergeant Cup is atrocious. It's he's screaming. It's like it's a death scream. His look, his face is emaciated. He's screaming like, ah! Like what who designed this head? But the rest of the figure, top notch, right? But yeah, it really is an amazing figure. If whoever out there is listening has not had a chance to experience Sergeant Cup, and good luck finding the iGear heads now. Like they're gone. Like iGear is not even a company anymore. But it really is a very good figure. But you know, what a good segue though, because
Uh-oh.
I did want to touch on it because I do know, and we've talked all about it numerous times, is your dislike for third party, um, and the with the price of stuff going up so much, and this is where I was kind of leading with that, is that if I'm going to spend $30 on a deluxe in Canada here, $70 for a leader figure, right? Ridiculous. It's $109 for a commander class figure, right? Why don't I just buy a third party figure, right? At this point in time, I'm already investing a significant amount of coin. Why don't I get something of higher quality that I know is going to be, get that hand feel that everyone likes talking about, get the plastic that I know is going to be solid, and get something that may not share the name, may not have that kind of stuff, but I'm going to feel more comfortable about, when it actually arrives, that kind of thing. And generally, I know it's a licensing issue for you, but when it comes right down to it, um, I'm buying a I'm buying for quality, for myself. What do you what where do you Is it simply just the licensing?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, it has nothing to do with the quality of the figure. For me, third party, because it's not official, just doesn't do it for me. There was a time. I mean, I have a handful. I'm looking at like three of them right now. I own, I think, maybe 4 or 5 third party things. I really like there's levels I have to that too. Like I think accessories, add-on kits, those sorts of things that modify a pre-existing Hasbro figure that
Sure.
require you to purchase the original. Those are cool in my book. I don't really do them. Just because I like to have the stock version, particularly for the website, because that is kind of how we work, right? So we're an archive of
Makes
that. So
sense. Yep.
but there's I could you can probably see it over my shoulder. I've got like Swerve. He's got the My First blaster in his hands. Like there's a couple things, and when they first started, I was like, this would be cool if to kind of fill the gaps of things Hasbro would never do. I have three. Oh, I don't even know who made them. They might be iYear or Impossible Toys, Quintessons that they made
Well,
way
Impossible
back
Toys
in the
did Quintessons.
yeah. So I've got a couple of those. So I'm like, well, Hasbro's made most of these already. Like, so like now, like in this day and age, like there's so much that's just not off the table anymore. I mean, for example, like there's that Flame Toys Gilthor figure that's coming out. Like, how, it's such a bizarre choice, and it's so weird and random and off the table. That like we've hit that point in Transformers where like every single weird minor character might get a figure officially, not even unofficially. So for me, it's like that was the appeal of any third party stuff, was for the things that would just never exist. And like we're in a world now where like anything can exist. So I don't want to cheapen that experience by trying to get ahead of Hasbro. Like for example, say Tarn, right? um I think like there's a whole bunch of third party Tarns. At some point there will be an official Hasbro transforming Tarn. And I don't want to lessen that experience by saying, well, I got something that looks just like it, even though it doesn't have a Decepticon logo on it. And it doesn't it may, or it's not as good. Or I feel like something like that Hasbro might cheat and wait for the third party folks to see what they do and then come around at a new angle, right? But for me, it's just more of, I'm not. It's almost like I equate it to reading fanfic. I don't read fanfic either, right? Those are kind of, in the same way, it's produced by fans. It's creating a story that is about something Transformers, but it's unlicensed. It's not official. It's not canon. It's my same mentality towards third party toys. These are they're physical embodiments almost of fanfic in a lot of ways. There's somebody's vision around Transformers, but not done with the permission of Hasbro. And so as an artist, yes, as someone who's a creative for a living, like I know what I'm doing when I sign away my creative rights to things, right? Like I understand that. But if I haven't, or if I was in Hasbro's shoes, I'd be very, very adamant about keeping that in line. So I don't like the idea that like people like, oh, well, Hasbro doesn't defend it. Well, that's not necessarily an excuse for making that decision to kind of do that. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's just more of an ethical thing than anything else.
Yeah. Well, well, I made this. We had this discussion on a previous episode of this special series with David Wallace. So if you've previously heard this, then you can skip this part. But it's he had mentioned the with regards to the DJD that members like Voss and Kaon are likely never going to get a figure from Hasbro. Right, where Voss is a sniper rifle and Kaon is an electric chair, right? Whereas if Megatron is not going to be a gun again, Voss is definitely not going to be a figure made by Hasbro. And an electric chair, a figure that turns into an electric chair, I highly doubt that that's going to be
the
done.
sniper rifle could be a submarine if you turn it upside down, right? So.
Touche. Yeah. Yeah. So there are still figures out there, but with me and the third party stuff, it comes back to quality with regards to that. Yes, yeah. I mean the Mastermind Creations Tarn is a great example. It's probably 4 years old now, that figure, and it sounds like they're doing one. Right, it's been on the rumor list for quite some time, and if they make one, I'm probably going to buy it because I just love that character, right? But will its quality be up to the level that the Mastermind Creations one is? And it came out 5 years ago. When the new one comes out, maybe, right? I don't know. I'm going to doubt it because Hasbro has to meet safety standards, right? And frankly, I'm okay with Hasbro's safety standards. They have to meet that, but I'm also a man in my 40s. So I don't want a Tarn figure that needs to meet the safety standards for an 8-year-old, right? I want a bit of a dangerous figure. I can deal with that. So, I'm not about to shell out, $400 for the high end Flame Toys one, because I'm not that kind of fan. But
But when you get down to it, like that, I was thinking it the other day. I was like, that $400, or I think it was 300. I don't know if they've raised the price on it, but I was like, the way things are going, that's becoming a better deal each day.
And I mean, Apollo, who does the show with us, she bought one, and it's a gorgeous figure. She showed it to us one time, and wow! And I saw one at a TFCon Chicago. I was walking around and I saw one sitting there, and man, it looks so good, really. And I mean, I if I was into that kind of stuff, and I really had, because it's a big figure too. If I had a spot for it, I'd probably think about getting it. But it's
Well,
just
think
one of
about it,
those
right?
things.
Like Titan.
Yeah,
I mean, we're using U.S. money here, right? But at least in my head, like
yeah,
Titan class Metroplex. If that's not your thing, that's was it 185, 190? So you're looking at roughly $100 more if you really want the Tarn figure. That's not
yeah. I know.
terrible.
And actually, I could probably sell Titan Metroplex right now to somebody for $500 and buy it. Because Titan Metroplex, the old Titan Metroplex, I mean, is a very valuable figure right now. And I've got all the boxes and stuff like that. My wife is killing me because I keep all my boxes. So I've got all this shit here. I've got all the boxes for it all in the basement, so it's taking up a lot of space. But I can respect your decision to avoid third party stuff. I just I really wish that you would you would at least acknowledge the higher quality, and at least the engine, some of the engineering marvels that these guys, whoever they are, because obviously they're ghosts in the fandom that come up with this stuff, except for there's one or two that actually put their name to it.
You ever
But
wonder why they're ghosts, though?
oh, I know. I don't wonder. I know. But they come up with some really interesting engineering, tricks, and I love doing that. I love going through their tricks.
I would say the only thing is, like, see, I can't acknowledge the quality or the engineering tricks because I don't experience the toys, so I can't say one way or another, what it
Mhm,
is, if it's better or worse. Because
mhm.
I've basically kept ignorant on that, probably deliberately too, for based on my
Yeah,
choices. But that's just yeah. So it's not so much like it can't like acknowledge the quality. It's just, I don't know what the quality is.
yeah. I mean, you go to cons though. You can at least, like, they
I
go they show that stuff at
But
those
the thing is,
things.
like, I'm not interested in it, so I don't even like look. I look at it and go, "Cool." The design looks cool. Like the
Okay.
figure looks cool. But like, for example, there was that one of those Computrons that was out pre Combiner
Okay.
Wars. It was gorgeous, and I remember I was like, "This is really cool looking."
Mhm.
I was like, "Yeah, it's third party. I'm just not interested in it. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to put that mental investment into it
Yeah.
because I know it's third party, and if I'm going to spend that money, not just as a collector, but again as a website owner, right? Like, I don't catalog third party on my site, so if I've got an extra $300, yeah, I can put that into a third party figure. I could also pick up, half the Cyberverse line and make sure that's taken care of on the site. And whereas people may not buy the kids lines, like, still needs to be archived, and
Mhm.
so it has to exist somewhere. So that's sometimes my focus is more of, well, it third party doesn't serve my website either, so that's a
Yeah.
whole other beast. So like, I can invest that money in third party, if I was to collect it, but it would then take away from TFU.info, and I just couldn't. I really couldn't do that.
Yeah. Well, if you ever get up here, I'll let you mess with my third party stuff, and you'll
So,
have no you'll have no responsibility to take it, or to photograph it or anything like that. You can just experience it.
sounds like fun. It's funny. That's why I buy other lines from every now and again, because I'm like, I don't have to photograph the toy. I don't have to photograph it in the package. I can just open it and enjoy it.
The the quality that that I've been finding, and we talked about it with regards to like just the fall off of some of the quality, but some of the engineering has been really spectacular for me. As you can see above my head, I've got the Moon Studios, you know, train bots, Radiatron. What do you? I
Right.
don't care. It's not Raiden. It's Radiatron. But it's you know, and then I've got the Studio Cell Unicron, or I guess it's just Studio. It's Studio Cell is his name, right? But so the Hasbro versions of these, and granted, we have not seen an actual version of the Takara Tomy uh, Raiden yet, but we have seen the Hasbro or HasLab, Unicron, and he's got a lot of he's got a lot of girth to him, and a lot of a lot of panels that fold out, and it's not a lot of hidden stuff. And then I look at the Studio Cell, and I'm like, well, we've got a third party company that was able to do it. Why couldn't Hasbro do it, right? And the it has nothing to do with size because it's just scaled down, right? It's just or theirs is scaled up. I question why one could do it and the other one couldn't, and that those kind of things go through my head when I'm looking at these the comparisons between the apples and oranges here, right?
Yeah, well, some of that stuff though is also, you have to figure when Hasbro is making something, and I think Unicron might not be the best example because they only made, whatever that number was for HasLab, right? But they're
12,000, I think.
12,000,
Yeah.
right? So, but as they're still working within a budget, and most companies are, but if they want to expand the budget on, say, something like Unicron, even if it's 12,000 figures, right? You figure if that item, whatever that one thing that's going to do to get rid of the panels, right? If it costs an extra dollar per figure, that's then an extra $12,000 per figure.
Mhm.
um you do that across, say, a larger scale figure or a larger release figure, say something like Earthrise Optimus Prime, right? Something that's going to be made in probably close to the millions, right? So
Yeah.
you make one change that costs $1 more per figure, or even say 10 cents more per figure. That is, $250,000 then, or that they have to, or if it's $100,000 they have to add into their budget. When these third party companies do their toy, they're only making what, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 figures.
Yeah, not
So
many.
yeah, so that scale, if they want to add something in that costs a nickel, it doesn't affect their margin as much. It doesn't affect their price as much. On top of
Yeah.
the previously mentioned child safety things and all the sorts of the other things that Hasbro has to do as far as being a legitimate company that could, if something happens, if someone gets hurt and they get sued, they can't just disappear in the middle of the night. So
Yeah.
I think when you ask why can't Hasbro do this, there's usually a bigger picture question. It's not that they don't want to. It's not that, because listen, we've talked to the designers, right? We talked to the marketing people. They want to put the best possible product out there. It doesn't make sense for them not to. But
Mhm.
in order to pull that off in the scale that they're pulling those things off, it's not necessarily as easy. Whereas, like with third party folks, hey, there's a bad part, we'll just make the other part and ship it out to you because we only have 1,000 customers, and that isn't really going
Yeah.
to affect us long term. Maybe you'll see also with third party companies who make a bad toy and they fold the next month, right? Or like they didn't
Mhm.
get the pre-orders on something they expected and the toy never comes out. So
Yeah.
Hasbro can't do that. If they tell retailers they have a toy coming out and they don't deliver, I mean, they would not just get sued, they would lose other products in the store.
Sure.
So
Well, Hasbro's in no fear of folding either, though, right?
right, they're no fear of folding, but you also can't piss off your retailers. You can't piss off the
No.
people who are putting your
No.
toy out. So I think there's everything that happens on a third party, with third party figures and on the business side probably happens at a scale of 10 to 20 times more on Hasbro side. So,
Mhm.
so those sorts of things of why can't they do or how they pulled this off, like I feel like when that's the apples to oranges comparison, because it's easier for a smaller company to implement those things. As we say, what I've learned working in for a very big company now is that one of the terms someone taught me is big ships turn slowly, right? And it's kind of the same
Yes.
thing. So
Yeah.
it's the same thing when you comes to third party and Hasbro. Hasbro's going to turn at a much slower pace than those third
Mhm.
party companies.
Mhm. Do you think that the designers and all the people that we've come to know through the fan meets and all that kind of crap, do you think that they feel like their hands are tied sometimes?
I mean, do you know anyone that works at a big company who doesn't? Yeah.
I guess, yeah. Yeah. So you know, it's we can I'll let you off the third party train at this point, and we'll, because it can be a little bit jarring, and a little heated sometimes, but we'll get off at this
Yeah,
stop.
and that's not a
Um,
knock on anyone who collects third party. I mean, none of my personal feelings of third party is not to say people shouldn't collect third party. It's just that I don't, and we don't cover it. That's
mhm,
that's always been my stance on it.
mhm. So you are doing the TFU podcast. You're doing the news and views and the just the regular show, right?
Uh,
And
yeah.
that's been going on for, oh boy, how many episodes have you been doing of that now?
So news and views is somewhere over 50 episodes, because I just do that sporadically where I feel like I need to talk about something, or I have an interview that I've recorded or something along those lines. University is at episode, let's see, I'm working on episode 119, I think. Um, we're going on almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in September. Yeah.
Wow. Now that's impressive because you're a one man show on that, right? And that's, I mean, Jeremy's tried to do a one man show a couple of times, and it's kind of crashed and burned a few times, and he'll restart it every now and then. But it's tough. The motivation, the self motivation there is commendable. I definitely give you props on that. I don't think I'd be podcasting or doing any of this other crap if the other guys didn't make me, show up on Sunday nights to podcast with them. Um, what what kind of stuff are you excited about with regards to university? What do you got coming up?
So right now we're still making our way through 1987. It's funny because I should be much further. If I was going weekly, like my initial plan was, I should be much further along than 119 episodes in 5 years. But some episodes come easier than others, and right now I'm on an episode that is just going to take some time. I'm working on an episode about the Young Corgi, the 1987 Young Corgi books in Europe. So they are choose your own adventure style books, and I go through them and I walk through every outcome in those books. So the
Oh wow.
fortunately fortunately it's only two. I've already finished going through one. I have to go through the other one. But like those books, they take up a lot of work, and then once I iron through them, though, the episodes are a lot of fun. uh Fortunately, these are the final two in the US or Europe that I have to cover, and I'll never have to do them again, at least as far as I know. So getting those out of the way will be good. Then after that, it's just the rest of 1987. So it's mostly a Headmaster's cartoon, which I've never watched before, and so I've been making my way through that. Part of my excuse, I always say, of doing this podcast is to experience all the bits of media that I've never really engaged
Yep.
with, and Japanese cartoons are for the most part ones I've never really watched unless they've been imported here
Same
as
here.
series. So I'm finally getting a feel for Headmasters as a show. And then there's some Marvel UK stuff I still have to cover too. So that's most of the rest of 87, and then we'll get into 88 and start it all over, and we'll talk a little more toys and a little more other fun stuff. Marvel US comics, which I think I've wrapped for 87. I'd have to look at my notes. Hold on, you know what? I'm on the computer that has the Excel file of my show plan for the year.
Well, good.
For let's see, where episode plan. Here we go. What do I have coming up? Young Corgi, yeah, Headmasters cartoon episodes. Oh, the Blackthorn comics I'll be talking about soon.
Mm,
Those are the Transformers in 3D comics.
yep. I've
We'll
got
be
all
doing
those.
We'll be doing a little bit of manga. We'll be doing a little online fandom in 1987 and merch for 87.
There was
Those
an
are always
online fandom in '87.
there was online fandom in 84. Uh, I did an
What was
episode on it.
online in '84?
There was 2 reviews, one of the comics and one of the cartoon. So I found the TF Wiki has it linked as far as like the first online post about the Marvel comic in some comics group that exists. I actually hunted down the guy who posted it and did an interview with him.
I
This is
think I remember
yeah,
this.
so
Yes. Yeah.
he just trying to get an idea of what the feel for what like being online at the time. As a college, he was in college at the time and he was reading comics
Okay. Yeah.
and in the 80s, yeah, and it was like you would post your thing one night and then you would wait a couple of days to see if anyone wrote back to you. So we'll do we'll go through 87. I don't even know, I haven't even done the research for it yet, so I don't even know if there's anything there for me to really talk about. And then that's why I usually combine it with the merchandise episode. So we'll look at some of the wackier pieces of merchandise in that one. And
That's
yeah,
cool.
we've got 120 is the episode I'm working on now, and we go through almost up to 130 with 87. So we got about 10 more episodes on 1987 before we talk about 1988, and we'll get into Pretenders and all that fun stuff.
Well, that's awesome. That's very cool. You've been really deep diving it, and I think that's exactly what the whole university aspect of it is all about, right? You covering all the aspects, and that's really neat. The I think we're getting close to the end here for us, but I wanted to just kind of end on, because you do buy all the main line. What what are some of the things that are coming out right now that you're really excited about?
Let's see. Let me
Got
let me.
another Excel file.
I got my pre-ordered Excel file. I'm excited about the. I mean, who doesn't these days, right? I just started getting the Velocitron stuff, so I'm really excited about that. I can't wait to like really photograph it and open it up. Let's see. You know, I would. I'm looking at Shattered Glass really impressed me with a lot of what's coming out. I'm interested in this just to see what's there. I really like the GI Joe crossover stuff that they have planned. I think the Hiss Tank and Bumblebee both look really good. I know they look like Transformers with GI Joe vehicles stuck on their back, but that's fine with me. It's not one of those things that really irks me, because I'm one for new figure designs. Like the thing that bothers me about the Bumblebee more than the design, and I like the design. I like the giant tires on his shoulders. Is the color. I just wish they went all yellow or all green. Just pick one and go with it.
Okay.
Instead of forcing that green and yellow together, because that's the part that doesn't look right to my eye.
I wish they'd come up with new characters.
I'm fine with that too. Yeah, like, well, I think that is a thing I want overall for the brand is let's start building some new characters. And Earthspark is another thing I'm looking forward to, because I think we're going to see a new story. I was one of those people, I hated Cyberverse when I first watched it. Was not impressed, and I stuck with it. And that first half of that first season, up until the Velocitron episode, was hard to watch. Like, I was hate watching it at that point, for 2 reasons. One, I didn't think the acting was very good, and 2, I really liked RID 2015, and I felt it wasn't measuring up. And then after the episode with Blur, it really takes a turn where you're like, okay, this is getting a little different. And then
dark.
it got dark, which I don't necessarily need, but I felt like it was something very different for the show. And once they got past the Bumblebee doesn't talk trope, and the as my friend Jenny calls it, Bumblebee needs an adult, which is like the whole beginning of the season. Once they get past those 2 things, the show really takes off and becomes the G1 show that, like, it becomes a G1 continuation that we really all kind of like wanted in a lot of ways, especially seasons 2 and 3, and then into season 4. All of that stuff, the beings trapped in the Matrix mind loop thing they did, and
That was cool.
quintesson that they had in there, or the quintessent, I should say. And he collects sound waves. Like all of that was just so cool for me.
Mhm.
There was so many times where it was like, oh, I can't believe they did that. Oh, that's really cool. So much so that like I really appreciate the toy line, even though it's meant to be a kid's toy line. Like just knowing I have representation and of those characters, they decided to do new characters like Meteor Fire and Iaconus and McAdam, like
Mhm.
having toys of those guys and having just Clobber. Some of the names are escaping me, but like just knowing those exist in some sort of toy form is really cool. So seeing that hopefully play out a little bit more in Earthspark, and we'll see what we get out of that. I think that's another thing I'm really looking forward to. And then seeing where the comic license ends up. I haven't finished the current run of IDW. I haven't been much of a fan. I'm very much with you in that it is fraught with pacing issues. Um, it is also fraught with lettering issues and editorial issues. So those are the things that the editorial not so much, but I blame the editor for the lack of lettering. That's kind of where I go with that. I'm like,
Once
they're
they lost Tom B. Long, it went
yeah,
downhill.
yeah, and I honestly think that I feel like the lettering, it's not that it's bad, it's that it's absent. Um, so there's places where I'm like, that needs a sound effect. That needs a box telling me where I am at this time,
Mm.
because I turn the page and now I have no idea what's going on. Little things like that I'm like, that real like I'm like, I don't know if I blame the editor or the letterer on that, but the lack of lettering
Mm.
is some of the things that have really taken away from what feels like really cool world building, but not necessarily good pacing. Um, so we'll see where it ends up. I'm one to think that if it ends up at Skybound, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm. Yeah. The I mean, nobody nobody knows anything for sure right now. It's all speculation. So it's we're you know we're all waiting to see, and it'll be interesting where it goes. Skybound or not, that seems to be the rumor that everyone's kind of going with at this point. But it's been the rumor for months now. Um, the um, Earthspark looks interesting. We're getting a couple new characters with that for sure. But everything seems to all be grounded around Prime and Bumblebee still, and then that seems to be what they're going with. They got their kid friendly character, and they've got their um, their touch point, right, with Optimus Prime. Oh, Optimus Prime, I remember him, right? Oh, and there's Bumblebee. Okay. Um,
Yeah, but they
I'm
might go the rescue bots route with that, and that they're there, but they're not really there. They show up,
true.
and especially when you see trailers. Trailers usually only show you the first episode or two.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like it might have a more of a monster of the week feel, especially when you see like who shows up as cameos in those trailers. Like I feel like
Right.
they're
Yeah.
going to face a different Decepticon each week and figure out how to beat them. And I don't think having Optimus in a story like that doesn't serve it very well, because right, it's like having Superman in the story all the time. Like he's just
Mhm.
gonna
Well, they
you
got
know
a pretty big voice actor to play Optimus, so I expect they're going to use him a lot.
see, I go the opposite. They got a pretty big voice actor to play Optimus. He's going to show up sparingly,
Oh, really? Okay.
because like he's going to show up the beginning of the season, the end of the season, and that's it.
Hmm. I think he'll be in it a lot more because yeah, I think I think they're going to want to use him. I think they're going to want to flex. They're going to want to flex with him, but we'll see. The other question I had for you is, I mean, we kind of you just kind of remind me of it, and I'd like to get your opinion on it. Is do you think, regardless of whether it's a show or a toy line, do you think every single toy line now is going to be G1 based with a splash of something else now,
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's a toy line or a show?
Yeah, to some extent, I think so, because something I did on News and Views recently is that Transformers is your favorite superhero brand, and I'm starting to feel that that's ever since they've gone to since they started to really iron out evergreen designs and
Mhm.
naming conventions, and they've and it was all kind of all over the place probably to Hasbro's detriment when you get to like the Unicron trilogy figures and Universe and stuff like that, where they were just slapping names on anything to keep the copyright for certain ones.
Mhm.
Now it becomes a matter of these are the heroes, much like the Marvel heroes and the DC heroes. These are the Transformers heroes and villains, and we're just we're gonna shift them into this look, this art style, this body style for the next thing. And I think the clearest indication of that is that the toys are packaged in robot mode, right? So it's no longer when the approach is now, at least from my perspective, is that we used to have vehicles that turned into robots. We had these very like cars and whatever planes, and yeah, they kind of made robots. I mean, you look at G1 figures, the robot designs are not necessarily that great, right? But they have now we have action figures that turn into cars.
Yeah.
And it's a very big difference in philosophy. And so I think because of that philosophy, you're seeing a character focus based on old media and based on the traditional looks of characters. So you will always see that with a splash of whatever it is they want to try to sneak in. I think that's going to be Unicron Trilogy and Prime going forward, just because people who are kids at that age are in their mid 20s, early 30s at this point, and that they're the ones becoming the next set of collectors. So until unfortunately until we get old and die off, the chances are is that it's going to stay with some sort of a G1 focus until Hasbro figures out or thinks they can make more money doing the other lines instead.
Hmm. Yeah. And and yeah, so I mean, I touched on this with when I talked to Maz. Uh, how much longer do you think you can go with this? I mean, you're going with the archive, so I mean, you got a built-in excuse, I guess. But I mean, do you want to be 60 years old and still buying Transformer toys?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. It's funny. It's funny It's funny you bring up Maz too, because he was a big contributor to TFU in the
I
early
know he
days.
was, yeah.
He was a huge help when we were just trying to complete the original like G1 archive and early on figures. So I think some of his pictures are still part of the archive. I wouldn't be able to tell you which ones off the top of my head, but there are definitely ones that go back that are like either rare Japanese or rare European figures. They're definitely his photos. Um, I would say, yeah, I don't know. You get into that of, do I want my wife and my daughter? Should I go first to have to sell all this stuff, right? And then also, where is the market for that in 10 or 20 years? Is it still exist? I've told this story before. I went to a baseball card show
Mm,
probably about 5 years ago. I had a little more than 5 years ago. I had some Magic the Gathering cards, early on ones that were pretty valuable, and I wanted to get them graded by Beckett. And so I went to a baseball card show when I was still living on Long Island at Nassau Coliseum, and I went there, and the Beckett people were there, and I was like, well, I got the cards sent off and for what they needed to do, and then um, I was walking around the baseball card show, and I'm like, these are all like 55, 60-year-old men, and I'm like, they're passing the same stuff back and forth. I'm like, baseball cards were a thing when I was really, in my, I was 7, 8, 9 years old. Um, Now I'm like, oh, that was because I'm like, those became a thing because our parents kind of pushed us into the things they liked as kids, right? And I'm like, these guys are in that thing that they liked as kids. And I'm like, there's no value in anything anymore because the people who want it either have it or don't want it. So like there's like
yeah.
everything plateaus at some point in terms of price. So like if I wanted to cash out my collection, when is the time to do it? I don't know, because I've never considered cashing out my collection until after
Mhm.
until after I had a kid, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I want to leave this for them to deal with, because usually that happens and people just like, here, take the whole thing, and here's $1,000. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. Well, somebody sold their collection to the store that I help out at, and
Hmm.
it was they had passed away, and the widow had been keeping the collection in bins in the house, and she had had it for 10 years, and she had a basically the collection was complete from G1 all the way to the first movie.
Oh
And
wow.
so she dropped it off at the shop and said, I don't want it anymore. Give, what do you give me for it? And I think he gave her $2,500 for it all. And I mean, she was ecstatic to get it, right? She thought it was worthless, right? And I mean, she might have gotten more. She might have got, I think it might have been five, right? She might have gotten 5 grand for it. But um, I mean, it was probably probably $20,000 worth of stuff, right?
Wow.
But she had no idea like where anything was. Like the bins were immediately just given to me and said, "Here, you need to sort through all this stuff." And like I spent weeks on that stuff figuring it all out, like where everything was and all this stuff. So was an impressive collection, and I mean this was years ago, but yeah, like I immediately for those couple weeks I was coming back to my house and looking around in here and thinking, "Oh man, if I die tomorrow, this is a problem. This room is a problem." So it really had me thinking about it, and so yeah, I don't know if it's that the conversation with Maz has really had me thinking about whether or not I want to be doing this in my 60s. You know, I got a lot of comics too, right? Do I want to be shoveling these boxes around? When I'm shoveling around myself, right? It's you know and do you want to be associating, going off to cons in your 60s? It's I don't know. It's optics, and do I care what other people think? Not particularly anymore, but I don't know. It's still kind of it's a weird thing. I still enjoy it. I still like hanging out with people, but I don't particularly play with the figures. I like to mess around with the engineering and just kind of take pictures of them and stuff. But I just like looking at them. And can I do that? And can I get that online? And probably the answer is no. But you know, I I I do. There's a in the next 5 to 10 years, there's a really substantial conversation that needs to go on with myself and to figure out what what am I actually doing here. And I think there's a lot of us in the same boat. Um, so yeah, but last thing before I let you go, uh, is it still transforming, or have you opted for converting?
If I mean, for me, it's transforming, but I will say converting sometimes just to mess with people, because I find it amusing. I get why Hasbro does it, and honestly, you could go all the way back to, you could definitely go all the way back to G2. I don't know if you can go back to G1 on it, but they don't use converting every time, but they'll use things like turns into on their
Mhm,
packaging. They avoid the word transform, even going back as far as G2. I think of off the top of my head, and maybe in late G1.
mhm. Yeah, it's one of those things that it irks a lot of the people, and everyone knows it as transform and roll out. Even Peter Cullen
Well,
said it recently at
the Lego
at
thing is ridiculous. Like that, I don't understand that one. Convert and roll out.
yeah, it's I don't my goodness. But I know, and we all know why they're trying to do it, but I mean, public perception is going to keep it transform and roll out. And no amount of legal mumbo jumbo or PR is going to change public perception on this one.
I think
It's
that's fine. I think for Hasbro, as long as they're not doing it, they don't care. Like as long as
yeah,
they're not setting the precedent, you want to go do it, that's fine. Like it doesn't hurt them. I think
no,
for them, they need to do it for all the legal reasons, right? But as long as they're doing their thing on their end, they're protected. And then it'll never
I
really
guess,
change.
yeah, I guess. But I mean, wasn't it the public's wasn't that them who called who started just calling bathroom tissue Kleenex, and and it's just, I mean, that's the brand name now, but everyone knows when you say, hey, can you go get me a Kleenex? That's, everyone knows what you're talking about, right? It's, it's all that kind of name recognition is you can't buy that, right?
Right.
So, and I mean, do they, I don't understand why they want to protect themselves from that. They just be, I get that they don't want to lose the name Transform, right?
Right.
They
Well,
don't.
that's what it is that because the word transformer is so, it's almost fairly generic, right? That
Mhm.
they don't want a robot toy that turns into something else being known colloquially as a transformer, right? So
Right.
that they lose their name brand. So like you could say that, right? But if they don't protect that, it could be taken away from them. So from
Mhm.
a legal standpoint, they have to go out of their way to protect it.
Right.
It's kind of what's there. Like Kleenex still says bath tissue on it, right? It doesn't say Kleenex, 100 Kleenexes inside, right? It's
Right. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. It's but I don't, does, I guess that's an interesting, thought experiment to just kind of see how many of these brand names have become colloquially known as what they are, instead of their generic name, or their actual name, I guess.
yeah, it's
That's
a handful. It's Coke, it's Xerox, and yeah, Kleenex. I mean, there's not some chapstick maybe.
yeah, a
Yeah,
chapstick. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
There's not a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. We all know why they're doing it, but the way it just, it sounds so stupid. so, so yeah. But anyway, I will keep to my word and I will let you go now. It's been a blast chatting with you. We've had you on transmissions before, but I this was a bit more of a deep dive, not as deep as you go into on Transformers University, but definitely a bit of fun here, just to chat with you, and and go a little bit further into some of the topics that we've kind of touched on the main show. But just a fun chat about just whatever, and you know I've had a good time.
Yeah, I had a blast, and I hopefully I get a chance to be on the main show soon, so I can compete for the title of #1 Beast Wars fan.
Not unless you're on permanently. It's a permanent title. You got to be on permanently. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you want to come on and be a permanent guest host, and I mean, you got to
Okay.
make a commitment every Sunday.
Can I go sub level like intercontinental Beast Wars fan?
Maybe. Well, we'll have a meeting and we'll talk it over. Yeah. Fantastic. All right, Ant. Well, this has been a blast, and but we'll have you on again. We'll have you on the main show, and we'll talk about some other stuff.
It sounds good.
Awesome. All right, buddy. Have a good one.
All right, take care.